Why was there no one waiting for her when the transport plane's ramp lowered? The hydraulic groan echoed across the tarmac, spitting Sergeant Anna Voronova into the biting wind of forward operating base Kestrel. The air was thin and sharp. It tasted of diesel fumes and snow that hadn't fallen yet. She stood there for a moment, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder, watching soldiers haul cargo across the compound. A few glanced her way. Their eyes cataloged her quickly. Standard issue fatigues that didn't quite fit right. An unfamiliar patch from a logistics unit that had been disbanded 3 years ago. Worn boots, tired eyes. They saw what they wanted to see, just another replacement, another cog for a machine that was always grinding down its parts. They saw a woman past her prime with a face that held its secrets like a locked vault. They saw a problem someone else had passed along. Then they looked away. No one was there to meet her. No welcoming committee. No briefing. She was invisible before she'd even arrived. She found her assigned barracks without asking for directions. It was a prefabricated tin box, humming with the struggle of a heater that couldn't quite win against the mountain cold. Inside, a group of younger soldiers had gathered around a burn barrel. Flames licked at the low ceiling, casting dancing shadows on the walls. It was a ritual of sorts, a way to clear out the unwanted gear of departed soldiers and make a little space for the living. A burly corporal with a shaved head and a cruel smile was feeding the fire. He picked up something from a pile of discarded equipment, an old olive drab flight jacket, canvas faded by sun and time, wool collar matted and worn. The patches had been meticulously removed long ago, but their faint outlines remained, ghosts on fabric, the shadow of a wing, a shield, a name she no longer used. "Hey, look at this relic," the corporal grunted, holding it up for the others to see. "Probably from the last Great War." Laughter rippled through the small group. He didn't know what it was. To him, it was just old trash. Without a second thought, he balled it up and tossed it into the flames. Anna stood in the doorway, unseen for a moment. She watched the fire catch the sleeve. The canvas blackened, curled, then erupted into bright, hungry orange. She remembered the man who had given her that jacket, the feel of his hand on her shoulder as he'd said, "You earned this, Nix, wear it well." She remembered the smell of jet fuel and the cold of high altitude. She remembered the faces of the team, all gone now, ghosts like the stitched outlines on the cloth. The fire consumed it all, turning memory into ash. She didn't flinch. Her expression remained a placid mask of indifference. She simply stepped inside, her boots silent on the gritty floor, and walked past them toward her bunk. The smell of burning wool and history filled the air. The soldiers fell silent. Their laughter died in their throats as they felt her presence. They watched her, suddenly uneasy. She hadn't said a word, but her silence was heavier and more unnerving than any shouted reprimand. They had burned her old jacket, a piece of her past she had carried for a decade, and in the quiet that followed, they had no idea that they had just awakened a past that was supposed to stay buried. She set her duffel bag on the metal frame bed, unpacked with methodical efficiency. Toiletries, spare uniforms, a small leather-bound notebook with no writing inside. The soldiers by the burn barrel dispersed quickly, their conversation forced and too loud. They wanted distance from whatever they had just felt. Anna sat on the edge of her bunk. The springs creaked under her weight. She stared at the flames still dancing in the barrel across the room, the last pieces of her jacket curling into black ash. She had worn that jacket through 14 operations across 3 continents. It had kept her warm in the Hindu Kush, had dried stiff with salt spray off the coast of Somalia, had been spattered with blood that wasn't hers in a compound outside Damascus. It was more than fabric. It was a witness to who she had been, a reminder of the warriors who had stood beside her, men and women who had trusted her with their lives, who had called her by a name that felt more real than the one on her dog tags. Nix, the night, the shadow, the one who moved unseen, but that life was over. The team was gone. The missions were classified into oblivion. The jacket had been the last physical piece of it, and now it was ash. She felt something tighten in her chest, not anger, not quite grief, something older and quieter, the ache of a door closing that could never be opened again. Outside, the wind howled across the compound. Snow began to fall, soft at first, then harder. The mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks lost in cloud. This was her world now, a forgotten forward operating base at the edge of nowhere, a place where soldiers were sent to wait out their time, to be useful in the smallest possible ways until they could fade into the background of someone else's war. She lay back on the bunk. The ceiling above her was stained with water damage and time. She closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids she could still see the flames, could still smell the burning wool, could still hear the corporal's laughter. They had no idea what they'd done, and that was fine. Let them think she was just another broken soldier put out to pasture. Let them think the jacket was just an old piece of trash. She knew the truth. Some things don't burn. Some things live in the muscle memory, in the way you breathe, in the way you see the world, in the way you move through darkness. The jacket was gone, but everything it represented was still there, waiting, coiled like a spring, ready. What do you do when a file tells you nothing at all? Colonel Madsen looked at the paperwork on his desk and then at the woman standing before him. The file was an insult, 3 pages long, and 2.5 of those were solid black bars of redaction. Sergeant Anna Voronova, transferred from the 77th Archival Command, a unit he'd never heard of, a unit that sounded suspiciously like a place they sent soldiers to be forgotten. Her service record was a ghost. No commendations, no disciplinary actions, no history of deployments. Just a name and a rank. He hated mysteries. Mysteries were liabilities. His office was a reflection of his personality, rigid, orderly, devoid of warmth. Maps of the surrounding mountain ranges were pinned to the walls with geometric precision. The air was stale with day-old coffee and antiseptic cleaner. Madsen was a man who believed in the tangible, in things he could measure: marksmanship scores, patrol reports, troop formations. Sergeant Voronova was an anomaly, an unquantifiable variable dropped into his carefully managed equation. "Sergeant," he began, his voice flat and dismissive. He didn't invite her to sit. "Your file is the most useless piece of paper I've had the displeasure of reading this year. It tells me nothing, which in my experience means one of 2 things. Either you are incredibly important, or you are a catastrophic failure that someone is trying to bury." He leaned back in his chair. "Given that you were sent here to the armpit of the world, I'm leaning toward the latter." Anna stood at perfect parade rest, her gaze fixed on the wall just over his shoulder. She didn't react to the insult. Her stillness was absolute, a stark contrast to the nervous energy that usually filled his office. It was the stillness of a predator, not of prey, and it pricked at the edges of his composure. "I don't have time for puzzles, Sergeant," he continued, tapping a pen against the redacted file. "This is a forward operating base in a contested zone. We have active hostiles. Extreme weather, a supply line that's tenuous at best. I need soldiers who follow orders, carry their weight, fit into the chain of command." He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I don't need ghosts with redacted histories, so tell me, what am I supposed to do with you?" "Whatever you require, sir," Anna replied. Her voice was low and even, betraying no emotion. It was as blank as her file. The answer irritated him. It was too simple, too correct. It gave him no leverage. He wanted a reaction. Anger, fear, frustration. He got nothing. He sighed, a gust of pure exasperation. "Fine, you want to be useful. You're assigned to logistics. Sergeant Miller is in charge of the supply depot. You'll report to him. You'll count bullets. You'll inventory MREs. You'll inspect bootlaces for fraying, for all I care." He stood up, a clear dismissal. "This is a frontline unit, Voronova. The men and women outside this office are warriors. Your job is to make sure they have what they need to do their jobs. Stay out of their way. Is that clear?" "Crystal, sir," she said, the single word delivered with the same unnerving calm. It was the final straw. He felt a surge of anger at her placid discipline, felt like she was mocking him with her composure. He wanted to provoke her, to see a crack in the facade. "One more thing, Sergeant. That jacket you came here with, the old one, I heard some of the men used it for kindling." He watched her face carefully. "Good. This is a modern army. We don't have room for sentimental relics. Remember that." He expected something, a flicker in her eyes, a hint of pain, a flash of anger. There was nothing. She simply held his gaze for a beat longer than was comfortable, a silent, unreadable challenge. Then she executed a perfect about-face and walked out of his office. The door closed softly behind her. Colonel Madsen was left alone in the silence, the ghost file on his desk feeling heavier than before. He had dismissed her. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a profound and dangerous miscalculation. He stared at the black bars on the pages, at the absence of information, at the void where a soldier's history should be. What kind of career leaves no trace? What kind of service gets erased? He told himself it didn't matter. She was logistics now. She would count supplies and stay out of the way. But somewhere deep in his gut, in the place where instinct lived, a small voice whispered a warning. You just made a mistake, a big one. He ignored it, pushed the file into a drawer, moved on to the next crisis, the next report, the next problem he could actually solve. Outside, Anna walked across the compound through falling snow. Her breath misted in the cold air. She felt nothing about the colonel's words. She had heard worse, been dismissed by better men, been underestimated by commanders with twice his experience. It was fine, expected even. People saw what they wanted to see. A washed-up sergeant with a mysterious past. A problem to be managed, a body to fill a slot. They never looked deeper, never asked the right questions. And that was how she preferred it. The logistics warehouse loomed ahead, a cavern of cold steel and neglect, a place for forgotten things. She smiled, just the faintest curve of her lips. A place for forgotten things, how fitting. Could a warehouse become a fortress in the hands of the right person? The logistics warehouse was a cavern of cold steel and neglect. Dust motes danced in the weak shafts of light filtering through grime-caked windows. It was a place of forgotten things, crates of obsolete radio batteries, pallets of winter gear with dry-rotted seams, weapons turned in for maintenance that had been sitting for months. It was exactly the kind of place a commander sent someone he wanted to disappear. For Sergeant Anna Voronova, it was a sanctuary of purpose. Sergeant Miller, a man whose gut strained the buttons of his uniform, gave her a cursory tour. "Here's the inventory list," he grunted, handing her a stained clipboard. "It's probably wrong. Just count stuff. Yell if you find the crate of coffee filters we lost last month." Then he retreated to his small, heated office to nurse lukewarm coffee and ignore her existence. Anna didn't just count. She worked with a quiet, methodical intensity that was both unsettling and awe-inspiring to the few junior soldiers assigned to the depot. She reorganized entire sections, created new inventory systems, found equipment that had been misplaced for years. Within 3 days, she had transformed chaos into order. Within a week, the warehouse ran with clockwork precision. Specialist Vance, a skinny kid from Nebraska with nervous hands, watched her work with growing confusion. She moved through the space like she owned it, like every crate and pallet was part of some larger pattern only she could see. She found things that shouldn't have been there. A case of night vision batteries tucked behind obsolete winter boots. A weapons maintenance kit that had been marked as lost in transit. She knew where everything was, could pull any item from memory. One morning, Vance worked up the courage to ask, "Sergeant, how do you know where everything is? You've only been here a week." Anna looked up from a parts manifest. Her eyes were calm, unreadable. "Because I pay attention, Vance. Most people don't." It was a simple answer, but it didn't explain the way she seemed to anticipate supply requests before they came in. Didn't explain how she could glance at a crate and know if the count was off. Didn't explain the quiet confidence that radiated from her like heat. The other soldiers in the depot began to relax around her. She didn't talk much, but she wasn't cold. She helped Vance fix a truck starter when he was struggling, showed a young private how to properly inventory ammunition without losing count, made sure everyone took their breaks. She was competent, reliable, invisible in the best possible way. But there were moments, small things that didn't quite add up. The way she moved through the warehouse, economical, precise, no wasted motion. The way she lifted heavy crates that should have required 2 people. The way her eyes tracked movement across the compound through the warehouse's high windows, like she was always aware, always calculating. Vance noticed, but he didn't say anything. In the military, you learn not to ask too many questions. Everyone had their secrets. Everyone had a past they didn't want to talk about. If Sergeant Voronova wanted to be a mystery, that was her business. As long as she kept the supplies running, as long as she did her job, it didn't matter. Weeks passed. The base settled into its winter routine. Patrols went out, patrols came back. Supply convoys made their treacherous runs through the mountain passes. The cold deepened, the snow piled higher. And in the logistics warehouse, Anna built something that no one recognized. She wasn't just organizing supplies, she was learning the base, its rhythms, its weaknesses, its needs. She knew which units were undersupplied, which commanders hoarded resources, which supply lines were fragile. She knew the patrol schedules, the guard rotations, the blind spots in the perimeter. She absorbed information like a sponge, stored it away, waited, for what she didn't know yet, but she would know when it came. One evening, as she was closing up the warehouse, Colonel Madsen walked past with his operations officer. They were deep in conversation, didn't notice her standing in the shadows. "The Argus relay is critical," the operations officer was saying. "If we lose that surveillance feed, we're blind to the entire Anvil Valley. We'd have maybe 6 hours warning if hostiles moved through." "Then we don't lose it," Madsen replied curtly. "Post a security detail if you have to." "Sir, it's a 3-hour climb in good weather. In winter conditions, it's a death sentence. We'd need specialized gear, trained climbers. We don't have those resources here." Madsen's jaw tightened. "Then we pray the weather holds." They moved on, their voices fatting into the wind. Anna stood very still. The Argus relay, a critical surveillance post, high in the mountains, vulnerable, undermanned, a single point of failure that could blind the entire base. She filed the information away, turned back to her work, locked the warehouse for the night, walked across the compound to her barracks. The other soldiers had stopped burning things in the barrel. The space felt emptier now, colder. She lay on her bunk, stared at the ceiling, listened to the wind howl outside. In her mind, she was already climbing, already planning, already seeing the routes, the handholds, the risks, the mission. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something close to peace. Because she knew now, she knew what was coming, she knew what would be asked of her, and when the moment arrived, she would be ready. The warehouse had been her proving ground, her camouflage, her way of learning this new battlefield, but the real test was still ahead, waiting in the mountains, in the storm, in the darkness that was coming. And this time, there would be no jacket to burn, only the skills that couldn't be erased, only the warrior who had never really left. When does a storm become more than just weather? The alarm cut through the pre-dawn darkness like a blade. Anna woke instantly, her body already moving before her mind fully processed the sound. Around her, soldiers stumbled from their bunks, groggy and disoriented. She was dressed and ready before most of them had their boots on. The compound was chaos, controlled but barely. Officers shouted orders. Soldiers ran between buildings. The wind had picked up during the night, carrying with it the promise of something worse. Anna made her way to the logistics warehouse. The emergency lighting cast everything in harsh shadows. Vance was already there, his face pale with stress. "Sergeant, we're getting supply requests from every unit. Cold weather gear, emergency rations, medical supplies. What do we prioritize?" "Everything medical first," Anna said calmly. "Then cold weather, then rations. Pull from the reserve stores. Don't wait for authorization." Vance nodded and started moving. Anna worked alongside him and the other depot soldiers, her mind processing information faster than she could speak it. The base was preparing for a major storm, not the everyday mountain weather they'd been dealing with, but something catastrophic, a whiteout that could last days, that could cut them off completely. She heard fragments of conversation from soldiers picking up supplies. The Argus relay was offline. The surveillance feed that watched the Anvil Valley had gone dark 4 hours ago, right before the storm hit. In the Tactical Operations Center, Colonel Madsen stared at a dead monitor. The screen that should have shown him the valley, the passes, the approaches to his base was black. "Options," he demanded. His operations officer looked grim. "Sir, we can't send a team up there in these conditions. Visibility is 0. Wind chill is pushing 50 below. we'd be sending them to die. So we sit here blind while hostiles could be moving through that valley. Sir, even if they are, they can't move in this storm either. We're all grounded. Madsen slammed his fist on the table. I don't like being blind, Captain. I don't like sitting here with my thumb up my ass waiting for the weather to clear. The door opened. Anna stepped inside, every head turned. Sergeant Voronova, Madsen said icily, this is a command briefing, your logistics leave. I can fix the relay, Anna said. Her voice was calm, certain. The room went silent. What did you say? Madsen's eyes narrowed. The Argus relay, I can repair it. Sergeant, you've been here 3 weeks. Your supply management. You don't have the training, the clearance, or the equipment to even access that installation, much less repair it. Anna held his gaze. With respect, sir, you don't know what training I have. The words hung in the air. For the first time, Madsen saw something in her eyes, not defiance, not arrogance, just certainty, the absolute confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of. Your file is redacted to hell and back, he said slowly. Are you telling me you're qualified for mountain operations? I'm telling you I can fix the relay. In a whiteout in sub-zero temperatures, climbing 3 hours up a mountain face. Yes, sir. The operations officer stepped forward. Colonel, this is insane. We can't send one person up there alone. If she gets injured, if she falls, we'll never even find the body. I won't fall, Anna said quietly. There was no bravado in her voice, no false courage, just statement of fact. Madsen studied her. For weeks she'd been a ghost, a shadow moving through his base doing meaningless work. Now she stood in his command center, calmly volunteering for a suicide mission. Why? He asked. Why would you do this? Anna was silent for a moment. Then, because it needs to be done, and because I can do it. It was the same answer she'd given him weeks ago. Whatever you require, sir, but this time it felt different. This time it felt true. Madsen looked at the dead monitor, at his officers' worried faces, at the storm raging outside. He was out of options, out of time, out of good choices. What do you need? He asked. Black operational suit from the specialized equipment locker, climbing gear rated for extreme conditions, communications pack, weapons maintenance kit for the relay system. She rattled off the list like she'd already written it, like she'd been planning this for days. The specialized equipment locker is classified. How do you even know we have one? Anna just looked at him, waiting. Madsen felt something cold slide down his spine. Get her what she needs, he said quietly. As Anna turned to leave, he called out, Sergeant, if you die up there, I'm the one who has to write the letter. I'd like to know who I'm actually writing about. She paused in the doorway. The storm howled outside. Just write what's in my file, sir. That'll be enough. Then she was gone, leaving Madsen staring after her, the dead monitor mocking him from the wall. His operations officer leaned close. Sir, she's going to die up there. Maybe, Madsen said. Or maybe we just found out why her file is redacted. He pulled up her service record on his computer, stared at the black bars, at the missing information, at the ghost hiding in plain sight. For 3 weeks he'd treated her like a problem to be managed, like a failure to be hidden away. Now she was walking into a storm that could kill her, volunteering to save his command. And he didn't even know who she really was. Outside, Anna moved through the compound like liquid shadow. The storm tried to slow her down. She moved through it like it wasn't there. Vance met her at the warehouse with everything she'd requested. Sergeant, you don't have to do this, he said. She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the worry in his young face. Yes, I do. Why? She thought of her old jacket turning to ash, thought of the team that was gone, thought of the names she'd once answered to. Because some things can't be counted on an inventory sheet, Vance. Some things you just have to do. She took the gear. Checked it with practiced efficiency. The black operational suit was pristine, unmarked, the kind of equipment that didn't officially exist. She ran her fingers over the fabric. It had been so long, but it felt like coming home. What makes a climb impossible for most people, but just another mission for someone who's done it before. The wind tried to tear her off the mountain. Anna kept climbing. The black operational suit regulated her core temperature, but nothing could stop the ice crystals from forming on her goggles. Every 30 meters she had to pause, wipe them clear, check her position. The GPS was struggling with the storm interference. She was navigating by memory now. by instinct, by something deeper than training. The Argus relay station was perched on an outcropping 11,000 feet up. In good weather it was a difficult climb. In a whiteout it was madness. The wind chill was pushing 60 below. Visibility was measured in inches, not feet. Every handhold was a gamble, every step a risk, but Anna had climbed worse. In worse conditions, on worse missions. Her hands found holds she couldn't see. Her boots kicked into ice that shouldn't have supported her weight. She moved with a rhythm that was almost meditative. Breath, reach, pull, step. Breathe, reach, pull, step. In the Tactical Operations Center, they watched her vitals on a monitor. Heart rate steady, respiration controlled, body temperature stable. She was a green dot moving impossibly up the mountain. "How is she not dead?" the operations officer whispered. Madsen didn't answer, he just watched, his jaw tight, his hands clenched behind his back. An hour passed, two. The green dot kept moving, kept climbing. Soldiers gathered in the TOC. Word had spread through the base. The supply sergeant was climbing the mountain. The ghost with the redacted file was doing the impossible. They watched in silence. Nobody cheered. Nobody spoke. They just watched the dot climb. Anna reached the relay station as dawn broke somewhere behind the storm clouds. The installation was built into the rock face. A small concrete bunker with communication equipment and surveillance gear. The door was frozen shut. She used a plasma welder from her pack to cut through the ice. The interior was dark, cold. The equipment powered down. She set to work immediately. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, testing circuits, checking relays, diagnosing the failure. It wasn't just the storm. Someone had been here. The security seal on the access panel was broken. Wires had been cut, deliberately, professionally. This wasn't equipment failure. This was sabotage. Anna felt something shift in her chest. The old instincts waking up, flooding back. She pulled up the security log. 4 heat signatures had approached the station 6 hours ago. During the storm, that took skill, equipment, training, hostiles, not random insurgent, professionals. They disabled the relay to blind the base, which meant they were planning something big, something they needed the valley for. Anna switched her comm to the command frequency. "This is Voronova." The relay was sabotaged. 4 hostiles approached the station 6 hours ago. They're still in the area, static. Then Madsen's voice tight with tension. "How do you know they're still here?" "Because I can see their tracks in the thermal overlay. They're sheltering in the caves below the summit, waiting for the storm to pass." "Can you repair the relay?" "Yes, but they'll know when it comes back online. They'll move to stop me." Silence on the other end. Then, "Do you need extraction?" Anna looked at her weapons. A suppressed sidearm, a combat knife, the plasma welder that could double as a close-range weapon if needed. She thought about the 4 hostiles below her, about the mission they were planning, about the base that was blind and vulnerable. "Negative," she said quietly. "I'll handle it." "Sergeant, you're one person against 4 trained hostiles in a storm on a mountain. Those aren't good odds." Anna smiled, just the faintest curve of her lips. "They're good enough." She started repairing the relay. Her hands moved with mechanical efficiency, but her mind was already planning, already seeing the approach vectors, the ambush points, the way shadows moved in whiteout conditions, the way sound carried in thin air. She had 15 minutes of work left. They would come before she finished. They had to. She was their only variable, the only thing standing between them and whatever they'd planned for the valley. The first one came exactly when she knew he would. A shadow moving through the storm, trying to be quiet, trying to be invisible, but Anna had been invisible longer than he'd been alive. She didn't move, didn't turn, just kept working on the relay. Her voice carried calm and clear through the wind. "You have one chance to drop your weapon." The man froze, his mind unable to process how she knew he was there. His fear was overcome by desperation. He fired. The shot went wide. Anna spun. Not with the welder, with the sidearm that had appeared in her other hand. One suppressed shot. The figure dropped. She turned back to her work. 3 more to go. They came together this time, trying to use numbers, trying to overwhelm her. But numbers didn't matter when you controlled the terrain. When you knew every angle, every approach, every blind spot. Anna moved like smoke, like shadow, like something that had never really been human to begin with. She was Nyx again. The night. The one who moved unseen. The warrior who had earned a jacket she'd worn for a decade. the ghost who had been forgotten but had never really left. When the last hostile fell, Anna finished repairing the relay. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. She activated the system. "Relay coming back online now," she said into the comm. In the Tactical Operations Center, the main screen flickered, once, twice, then blazed to life with crystal-clear high-definition imagery of the Anvil Valley. The storm was beginning to break. In the growing light of dawn, the view was pristine. The camera panned slightly, revealing four still forms against the fresh white snow. The base was no longer blind. Their eye in the sky had been restored. A collective sigh of relief went through the TOC. Colonel Madsen stared at the screen, then at the single green dot that was Anna, already beginning its descent. He pulled up her file again, typed in a search query, cross-referenced with special operations classifications, found what he'd been looking for: Project Chimera, code name Nyx. The pieces clicked into place. Her redacted file, her impossible skills, her quiet, unnerving competence. He hadn't been sent a failed soldier. He'd been sent a legend on a cooldown tour, a shark forced to swim in a fishbowl, and he, in his arrogance, had tasked her with counting inventory. The shame was a physical weight on his shoulders. He looked at his operations officer. "Never," he said quietly, "never underestimate someone based on their assignment. Do people become legends, or do they simply reveal what they've always been?" The storm had passed. The world was stunning, silent white under a pale dawn sky. Anna walked through the outer gate of Fob Kestrel. The soldiers on duty simply stepped aside. They had heard the calm chatter, the fractured stories spreading like wildfire from the TOC. They watched her with a new understanding, their faces a mixture of awe and a healthy dose of fear. She moved through the compound, a solitary figure in black against the snow. She was covered in a layer of frost, her face etched with fatigue. But she walked with an unwavering, determined stride. Work details stopped. Soldiers filing out of the mess hall paused, their trays in hand. NCO's barking orders fell silent. An entire military base came to a standstill to watch her pass. There was no cheering, no applause. The moment was too heavy for that. It was a silent, profound acknowledgement. They weren't just looking at a sergeant anymore. They were looking at something other, something far beyond their experience. Colonel Madsen was waiting for her outside the command center. He stood alone, his posture ramrod straight. As Anna approached, he watched her, his expression unreadable. All his assumptions had been shattered. All his rigid by-the-book rules had been proven inadequate. She had broken protocol, defied a direct order, and in doing so had saved his entire command. She stopped a few feet from him, her frost-rimmed goggles still hiding her eyes. The silence between them stretched thick with unspoken words. Madsen could have reprimanded her, could have demanded an explanation, could have asserted his authority. He did none of those things. He was a proud man, a man who had built his career on the bedrock of military order, but he was also a pragmatist. He knew when he was out of his depth. Slowly, deliberately, Colonel Madsen raised his right hand to the brim of his patrol cap. He executed a perfect, formal salute. It wasn't the casual salute given to a subordinate. It was a gesture of profound, unequivocal respect, a salute from a commander to a warrior who had proven herself to be his superior in the only arena that truly mattered, the battlefield. Anna watched him for a moment. Then she gave a short, sharp nod of her head. It was not a return salute. It was an acknowledgement, an acceptance. Then, without another word, she walked past him, heading for the barracks, leaving the colonel standing alone in the snow, his hand still held in salute to the ghost who walked among them. The small prefabricated room was Spartan, but to Anna it was a pocket of quiet order in a chaotic world. The black operational suit lay neatly disassembled on a towel on the floor, each piece being meticulously cleaned of ice and grime. The fabric was self-repairing, the electronics hardened, but discipline dictated that gear was always maintained. It was a ritual, a way to decompress the violence and center the mind. She sat on the edge of her bunk, the parts of her suppressed sidearm laid out on a cloth before her. With practiced, economical movements, she cleaned each component, her hand steady, her focus absolute. A soft knock came at the door. She looked up as Specialist Vance entered, holding a steaming metal mug. He looked nervous, out of place, but determined. He held the mug out to her. "I thought you could use this, Sergeant," he said quietly. He didn't use her call sign, didn't mention Project Chimera. He used the rank she wore on this base, the identity she had chosen to inhabit. It was a simple gesture, but it was deeply respectful. It acknowledged both the ghost and the soldier, and honored her right to be the latter. "Thank you, Vance," Anna replied, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. She took the mug, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. He nodded, seeming unsure of what else to say. "We're all glad you're back," he managed, then quickly retreated, closing the door softly behind him. Anna took a sip of the coffee. It was strong, black, bitter. It was perfect. She looked at her faint reflection in the dark window pane. The face that stared back was tired, lines of exhaustion etched around her eyes. But the eyes themselves were clear, steady, calm. The memory of her old jacket flickered in her mind, the canvas turning to ash in the burn barrel. She thought of the men she had served with, the team that had been her family. They were gone. The jacket had been the last physical piece of them, a relic of a life she could never reclaim. Its burning had hurt more than she had let on, a final severing cut from her past. But the past was not a piece of cloth. It was the skills they had taught her, the discipline they had instilled in her, the warrior they had forged. That was their true legacy. That was what had allowed her to climb the mountain, to face the storm, to save the base. Her old jacket was gone, but the respect she had earned today was a new kind of armor, one that couldn't be burned. On a small monitor in the corner of her room, a live feed from the Argus relay played silently. It showed the Anvil Valley, serene and empty under the morning sun. The perimeter was secure, the base was safe. Her work for now was done. She finished cleaning her weapon, reassembling it with a final, satisfying click. The silence in her room was no longer the silence of isolation, but the quiet peace of a mission accomplished, of a purpose fulfilled. Outside, the soldiers of Fob Kestrel went about their duties with a new sense of security, their gazes occasionally drifting toward the unassuming logistics depot. They knew a ghost was watching over them now, and the mountains didn't seem quite so menacing anymore. In the command center, Colonel Madsen filed his report. His words were careful, measured, but they told the truth. Sergeant Anna Voronova had saved the base, had neutralized 4 trained hostiles in conditions that would have killed most operators, had repaired critical infrastructure under fire, had done the impossible. He recommended her for commendation, for recognition, for something that acknowledged what she had done. But he knew the paperwork would disappear, just like her original file, just like everything else about her. Some soldiers served in the light, with medals and recognition and parades. Others served in shadow, their sacrifices known only to those who witnessed them, their legends whispered rather than written. Anna was the latter, always had been, always would be, and that was fine with her. In the barracks, she lay back on her bunk, closed her eyes, listened to the sounds of the base settling in for the night. Footsteps on frozen ground, voices in distant conversation, the hum of generators, the wind still whispering through the peaks. She thought about the corporal who had burned her jacket, wondered if he knew what he'd done, wondered if he understood that he hadn't destroyed anything. He just revealed what had always been there, waiting, coiled, ready. You can burn a jacket, you can redact a file. You can assign someone to count supplies and hope they fade into the background, but you can't erase what lives in the muscle, in the training, in the soul of a warrior who knows who they are. They had thought she was broken, washed up, past her prime. They had thought the old jacket was all she had left. They were wrong. The jacket was never what made her dangerous. It was never what gave her strength. It was just fabric and thread, a symbol, a memory, but the woman who wore it, she was still here, still capable, still every bit the operator she had always been. They burned her old jacket, so she returned wearing black ops gear and reminded them all of a simple truth. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimated, the one they dismissed, the one they sent to count bullets and stay out of the way, because that person has nothing left to prove, nothing left to lose, and everything to give, when the moment demands it. When lives hang in the balance, when impossible becomes the only option. That's when legends stop hiding, stop pretending, stop being ghosts. That's when they step into the storm, climb the mountain, face the darkness, and remind everyone watching what real strength looks like. It doesn't need a stage, doesn't need applause, doesn't need recognition, it just needs purpose and the will to act. Anna opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling one more time, then closed them again. Tomorrow she would go back to the warehouse, back to counting supplies, back to being invisible, but now everyone would know the ghost wasn't just a ghost, she was a guardian, and this base, this forgotten outpost at the edge of nowhere was under her watch. Let the mountains loom, let the storms come, let the hostiles plan their attacks in distant caves. They would find what she had always been, what they had awakened when they burned her jacket, not a relic, not a memory, but a warrior who had never stopped being exactly what she was trained to be. And that was something fire could never touch, something redaction could never erase, something that lived beyond cloth and thread and paperwork. It lived in action, in discipline, in the quiet certainty of someone who knows their worth, doesn't need to prove it, but will, when the moment demands, every single time.